The members of the AHA know what lurks in the bayou. They know the dangers of venturing into the swamps unprepared, of being foolhardy. They know to fear that which they hunt, but they know how to master that fear in order to banish the monsters of the bayou. Yet, there is something that they fear above all else. Something they do not know how to fight. An ominous presence that hunts the hunters. Something that strikes a paralyzing fear into even the bravest of hearts. Something ruthless and unrelenting in its lust for violence and revenge. The being known as the Phantom. Gus LaRue always had a flair for the theatrical and a predilection for violence, both of which would serve him well even before he joined the American Hunters Association. Before his transformation into the Phantom, Gus LaRue was a well-educated and successful lawyer. Despite the growing contempt for his father, he maintained a position in society many were envious of. However, Gus LaRue was on the path of death and destruction that would forever change him and alter the course of the growing conflict with the sculptor. His conflict with Lynch would see him led down a path of the damned, a path that would see him become one of the most infamous members of the American Hunters Association. The details of the event that scarred Gus LaRue are vague and at times conflicting. However, we know he ended up losing one of his forearms, and his face was left severely scarred. Someone with less willpower may have given over to despair, for surely such injuries would spell death during the 1890s. But Gus LaRue was fueled by rage and an insatiable lust for revenge. His acts of vengeance were so severe that local newspapers began reports of a phantom or spectre haunting the French Quarter of New Orleans. The main target for his vengeance was his own father, while a rushed act of violence would get the job done. Gus's penchant for the theatrical saw him implement a cold and calculated assassination. Having his father's Winfield altered to be a size he could manage with a single arm, he stalked his way through the French Quarter towards the theatre. Gus's initial plan was filled with poetic justice. He was to wait for the orchestra to be playing their crescendo before extinguishing his father's life. However, this was easily forgotten as the lust for blood and vengeance overcame him. Gus LaRue, unable to contain himself, fired a single bullet. His father died while the orchestra were still tuning their instruments. In many cultures, patricide would damn a soul to eternal torment, and Gus LaRue was no exception. The Irish woman was coming to collect the debt he owed. Having recruited Gus LaRue's father into the ranks of the AHA, Lynch took his murder as not only a personal insult, but also a damaging loss to her ranks, causing yet another setback to her plans. Struggling with his missing arm, the pain and the sensation of a phantom limb gave Gus LaRue sleepless nights, yet he knew he was left with little choice but to go on the run. His reputation now completely destroyed, he realized the justice he fought for did not exist. He fled New Orleans and intended to never come back. His status no longer mattered. He was starved most days, forced to beg and scavenge and even steal just to survive. His ever-constant pursuers, never far behind. Upon reaching the state border, something prevented him from leaving. It wasn't a sense of honor, but perhaps the realization that it would be better to die fighting than be forever running from Lynch's wrath. Affixing a blade to his Winfield, dreading having to use such a crude and violent weapon, he turned back and headed towards his inevitable end. When he finally used the bladed Winfield to cause the bloody and painful death of another human, he felt no different. There was little compassion and humanity left within the Phantom. Feeling drawn back to the bayou, Gus LaRue was confronted by the Irishwoman, her otherworldly powers making it easy to find him. Gus LaRue chose the place for what he thought would be his last stand, a simple barn with the advantage of height and a number of places to shoot from, he began to prepare, burning the field out the front, and with a body of water behind him, he was ready. In the water lurked a creature which Gus had witnessed dragging other creatures below the surface. He knew Lynch and her men could not approach him through the lake. It was at dusk when he saw them, 3 hunters in the tree line. Having affixed a scope on his windshield, he could see them clearly enough, and opened fire. The duel with Lynch's men lasted throughout the night. Gus believed by morning he had slain 2 of them. Yet, the morning was quiet, and it wasn't until dawn when he saw movement. Coming out from the trees was the Irishwoman, Lynch herself, her white hair mostly concealed by a wide hat, yet losing none of its striking brilliance. She carried with her a wooden case. Gus LaRue expected her to call out or open fire, yet all she did was place the wooden case on the ground and fade back into the trees. Expecting the case to explode, Gus LaRue waited. He kept watch on the tree line, constantly aware of the ominous presence of the wooden case. When dusk fell, he left the safety of the barn. Shrouded in darkness, he crept towards the case. It was engraved with the letters AHA, and lighter than he expected. Gus opened the box. Inside he found a letter. It read, "After the efforts we had gone to secure him, the death of your father was most inconvenient for us, but revenge would be an overcommitment of our limited resources. Instead, we offer you a token of peace, in the hopes it will better help you to settle your debt. Now you may find yourself in ours. Regards, L." Alongside the letter was a prosthetic arm of exquisite craftsmanship. Engraved in tiny letters was the word Phantom.